Hello, my name is Dr. Gil Decker. Let's look at the 6 steps for successful design of UX and user-centered research. I will introduce you to the elements of design, the process, why is it important to understand what users are thinking, doing, and feeling. We will talk about the total user experience. I will show you the 5 factors that will help you add value to your service, to your product implementation. A few design elements you need to think when you take the information, you're now processing the data, how you now implement and improve. And then I will lay the 6 steps process, defining the question. I will show you how to do it and why is it important. Doing your user research, including market research, deciding on your research methods, how you recruit participants, how you define them, developing and carrying the study, implementing and improving the service after you've carried your research. Now, the first thing to show you is this. I think that if our minds are clear, then our design will end up clear as well. I will show you what I mean. First, let's look at this photograph, which I took in Israel many years ago. It is very common in Israel where you walk down the street and you look to your left and you see this beautiful area which was developed. You see the beautiful green grass, the palm tree, the pavement, and right next to it, there is a plot of land which is empty, bare, which is waiting for the developers. So I stood in the middle right there where I took the photo, and I thought to myself, this is brilliant. This is how the designer mind should be. The mind of the designer should be. One side is built, maintained, analytical. There's a product here. Look at the beautiful spacing between the trees and between these light posts. You see the measured space. That's one side of the mind. The other side should be bare, empty, potential. Think of all the beautiful things that I can build, all the things that I can create. This is the empty space, the imagination. This is how your mind should be if you want to become a UX, user-centered designer, or product designer, or graphic designer, or web designer, or designer of services. Analytical on one side, but also creative and potential. Now, when I talk about design, there are 4 elements for design. So what is design? Design is a tool to create order and function based on a plan. That's the tool. Design is a tool. How do we do it? We make sure that design, let's talk about graphic design for a second, adds value to the message. So there is a message, then the design needs to add value to that message. It has to be relevant to the content. It's not decoration. It is meaningful. Design needs to create consistent visual style and hierarchy on the page or with your product. We do that using composition, colors, text as image, scales. There are many design elements that we use to create consistency, visual consistency, so that you know that there is one person, one organization that is speaking to the user through the consistent voice, the consistent visual voice. Third suggestion here, your design should be engaging. Engaging means that it should stimulate experience. So if you take a lot of text and you convert it to graphic design to website, or if you take an ID and you convert it to product design to services, it needs to capture the attention of your users so that they will want to spend time on it. The fourth element here on the right, your design needs to clarify. It needs to bring understanding where there is confusion. If there is chaotic ID, if there is too much text, there is confusion, the design should take the important elements and the design should structure it and bring clarity. You do that by removing unnecessary visual images, text, removing unnecessary information. If it's product design, remove unnecessary functions, unnecessary because they are confusing or they're not useful for your users. So 4 elements of graphic design. It needs to add value, consistent style, consistent voice, stimulate experience, be engaging, and to clarify elements. So thinking of the process of developing designs, and here is a table that shows you the progress of a project. So starting from 0 here, and 100% is the completion. Now I want to show you that page wireframe, if you develop websites, we call it page wireframe, prototype or visual design. For this presentation, I'm talking about all 3 together, product, service, web, physical design. All three here, if you can see, they stand around 50%, so halfway through the project. Because the first aspect of design is not the look, it is not the shape. The first aspect of design here is requirement. It is your user research, which is what I'm going to look into today. First, you need to understand what is the requirement of the project. What do my users require? What is the schedule, the budget? Who makes the decisions? All of these things should be agreed before you go and develop your prototype, your wireframe, your visual designs. I always say that graphic design consists of two words, graphics and design. Graphic is the first word. Graphic means to write. Design is the visual. So you have to remember first is the step of writing the content, doing user research, doing market research. Content is king. Content is always king. Design is not ornamental. Design is not wallpaper. Design is useful art. It is functional. Functional to what? It is functional to the content. The first step in graphic design, web design, product design, or if you design services, is to do your market research, find a gap, do your user research, know who's the user, and then check your requirements, budget, timescales, who makes the decisions. If someone comes to you and they jump ahead and they go and ask you, can you please tell me which color is good? Which color is good? We want to use a good color. Your answer should be, all colors are good. And I do a presentation about colors elsewhere. Any color is good, even gray is a good color. It all depends with the user. What are their perception? What do they need? What is the content? And then you would fit your design to support the content. So first you need to know where is your north. Where is the north? Because once you know where the north is, and once you know the quality of the soil, of the land, of the ground, then you can start sketch your plan for a new house. Because if you know where the north is, you will know where the sun sets. And if you know your users, you would know whether they are a young couple or whether they're older people. So you will know whether you want the sunrise in their kitchen or in the bedroom or in the living room. All these decisions that you will make depends on knowing where the north is, knowing how good the soil is, knowing your user, what are their requirements, what do they need. And then you would fit your design, in this case, design for a house, you would fit it to your users. This is, by the way, how we structure information. We call it information architecture, and this is how we develop websites. We look at the user's journey. What do the user need? Where is the gap, the missing point? What can we add to it? Always know your north. Always know your users. And then you can think about the actual design. So if we think about user experience research, also known as user-centered research, it is a study of the users so you can develop a design of product, service, and experience that's suited to them. To do so, you need to think about three things. You need to research what the users are thinking, doing, and feeling. These are three elements. There's also a fourth element. Today I'm focusing on three elements. If you don't do any of these, you will not get the complete knowledge of your users. And I'll give you an example. Many times we don't do that. We don't explore what they think, do, and feel, but rather we just look at what users are doing. That is when people look at the statistics only, not analytics, but statistics. That's when people are looking at the numbers. The stats, the numbers will tell you what people do, but not why they've done it. So if I look at this example here, this is a scheme for a lovely website, nice colors, everything looks good. The designer placed a new button here on the top left. It says, click here to get X. X, let's say, certain product, which I call X. Now, let's say there was a problem with the design, there was miscommunication, something went wrong. When you click on this button, you don't get X, but rather you get Z. You get something else. You get a different product, a different website, something which is not right. It's not what you expected. Doesn't matter at the moment why, but it happens a lot. It says click to get X, you click, you get Z. Now, if you look at the statistics only at the statistic, you may see a spike, a mountain, a spike in the people who have accessed this button, who click this button. So people may think, wow, it means that this button, the resource is good. We need to promote it even further because you see a spike of use. But if you look at what people thought and what people felt, you would know that this is not right. So what people thought that they will get X resource if they click here. What people did, they moved the cursor, they moved the mouse, and they literally click this button. That's what they've done. Now, what do they feel about it? That's crucial. If you examine, if you ask them what do they feel about it, they will tell you, actually, I feel unhappy, frustrated, I feel incomplete. So you look at that and you say, I can see that people are using this button, but they are unhappy. What's wrong? And then you will realize that there was a problem. There was a problem in that button. It didn't give users what they want. So yes, it was popular. Yeah, it was popular because the designer put it on the front page because we promoted it, but it didn't work. And you find out what works, what doesn't work, only when you look at what users are doing, thinking that they were doing, and what they're feeling at the end of it. If you look at the statistic only, you do not look at what they're feeling. So the stats will tell you what is popular. That's not what you need to find necessarily. You need to find what works for the user, not what is popular. Because UX, user-centered design, is a total experience. It is what the user is thinking, doing, and feeling. So I've summarized here the 5 factors in service product that can add value to your users. To add value, you want your service, your product to be useful. Now, this is not just a word, useful. What I mean here is that you want your service, your product to be relevant to the user. You want it to solve problem. If people have problem and then they contact you and you give them the answer, you solve them a problem. Then you become important. You become important to the user. You want your service, your product to be practical. By practical, I mean it has to be easy to use. There should be no frustration. Many products are important, they are useful, but they're not practical. For example, at this point, it is very difficult, not very difficult, but it's confusing for researchers, for students to access databases. So if you go to the online library, the libraries are paying publishers. Publishers provide journal, article, and databases. Each publisher has their own interface, but the user doesn't know it. The user just wants to reach a resource, and then they need to log in again and again. They're looking for another resource. They reach a different publisher, different login, and so forth. This is confusing. It can cause frustration. So you don't want that. You want practical, easy to use. The third value is that your service, your product should be credible. By credible, I mean 2 things. One, I mean that the service should last over time. So if a person, user comes and get a service, they want to go away and they want to know that when they come back next month, they will also be able to get that service. If they return next month and the door is shut and it says, sorry, we've closed this service, that is not credible. So credible, your service, your product lasts over time. Credible also refers to the information. So if you're a library, you want your information to be accurate. It needs to be credible. The fourth factor is that your service resources should be accessible so all kinds, all different users are able to access it. And you want your product, your service to be unique. Unique, it means that the user wants to come back for more. This is about positioning, about information architecture, branding, emotional design, how you design your resources that they are unique to you. Now, let's look at the 6 steps process of how to conduct UX, user-centered research. Defining the question, conducting your user research, deciding on your research methods, recruiting participants, developing and carrying the study with your users, and then the implementation, the actually improving of your service. Let's look at each step. Step 1 is always to define your question. Before you carry UX research, you need to be very clear and very specific about the question. You cannot have a too broad and too open questions. It will not work. It has to be a specific question. You can then do another UX research with another specific question. This is crucial. Many times clients are stuck at this first step. So to define your question, you need to understand what is the problem that your organization is trying to solve. To think about what is the problem, you should think about two parameters here in blue color. Why I want to learn this thing. So you need to ask yourself together with your stakeholder, why do you want to learn this issue, this problem? What would it give you if you analyze this problem, this issue? The second step is how this will meet the organization aims. So the aims of your institution needs to be met with that research. So if you decided you want to learn about something, okay, once I've learned about this, how would that support the aims of my institution? If you can define why you want to learn this issue, how it will meet the aims, then you can identify a clear problem. And that is step one. Step two, now you start with your user research, also market research. So you need to define your users, their needs. You can use survey, focus group, and interviews. Here are a few questions. Who are the users? What are their behaviors, goal, motivation, and needs? And one of the important questions, I think, which I've marked here in blue, what assumptions have you made about them? I have developed a paper which deals exactly in that, the assumption that we make. How do we understand ourselves as researchers before we try to understand the users? Other questions, how users currently use your service? Are they using other product services? If you're a library and you are delivering services, educational services, you want to think of the different learning styles of your users. Some people are more visual. They prefer to learn by seeing. Some prefer to learn by hearing. Some prefer to learn by doing. Here's a table which gives you some clues about those different styles. The next step is when you're doing your user research is to develop what we call personas. Personas, as you can see here, are segmentation of your users. It makes it easier for you to clarify who are the user. For example, here's one user. You have the name, age, where is she coming from? Here is a quote about what she is most interested in. You can summarize her goals, frustrations, what would look as a success, what tasks would look to her as a success, and so forth. Now, still on step two, you also want to do market research. And there's a lot of tutorials and theory about how you do in market research. Here I want to show you a quick market research that I have conducted when I was looking at current trends in video productions that promote libraries, library services. So it's current for now. And I found out that there are 4 trends in recent film productions. One, I found out that the presenter is always looking directly at the camera. They never look to the side. Have you ever seen those videos when the presenters kind of look to the sides? Doesn't look directly at you? I find it so awkward. It's like speaking to someone right now and they don't look you in the eye. Luckily, what I found out is at the moment, video productions, you will find that the presenter always look direct at you. And this is good. I found also that most libraries are using students to present the video. They don't use librarian or professional actors. They're actually using students. I also find out that at the moment, you will see that the lifestyle of the student is embedded. So you will literally see in the video the student in their room, when they wake up, when they go to the gym, everything that they're doing in addition to their study. This is embedded in the video. The first trend that I found out is that the film production itself is what I call social mediaist. That it's not a real word, I've invented it. What I mean is that the production of professional videos, these are professional videos that promote libraries, imitate social media video productions. Social media is when people speak to, hi, how are you? Welcome to my channel. And sometimes you see them leaning closer and you see them pressing the play button or pressing the stop button. This is very social media style of filmmaking. This has been taken and it has been used now in a production, real production, to give a sense of social media. So what I'm showing you here are 4 trends in recent film production, which I found out because I've done market research for some project. This, I can assure you, will change. These trends will change in the future, but it doesn't matter. I'm just showing you, you do a market research, you figure out who are the user, who are your competition, what people are doing at the moment. And then you can decide whether you want to do something similar or something completely different. Okay, step 3 in the 6th step. Step 3, now you want to identify your research methods. Here I'm going to talk about qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative will answer the question of why. It is a humanistic approach. It makes sense of the data. And here I've listed when is it best used, outcome, and specific methods. Quantitative, the different side of research method, will tell you how much, how many, how much. If that's what you want to know, if you need a more scientific empirical observation, use that. It is about cause and effect. Now, in truth, we always use both methods. So let's look at this method in more detail. Let's look at some examples of the different approaches, the different types of techniques. You can use interviews, where you meet with participant one-on-one. You can use observations. You can use cognitive mapping methods. As you can see here, a student was asked to literally draw on a map of the campus where she has been and write down. So 8 o'clock, she's been to the gym. Then 8:15, she went to the library. At 9 o'clock, she went to this room, and so forth. So you see, she has drawn the time and the place. Cognitive mapping. You can use cultural probes, photo study, or event cards. So I'm looking at the event cards right here. These are cards that we hand the user after they completed the task, so after the event. And then we ask them to reflect and to write what happened, who was involved. And here I want to show you, what did you do? What were your thoughts? And what did you feel about it? So you remember the do, think, and feel, doing, thinking, and feeling, which I've mentioned at the beginning. Here they repeat here. What did you do? What did you think you're doing? And what did you feel about it? Perfect, so very good. You can also do graffiti walls, tours, or you can do the holy grail of UX. I call it the holy grail. That is user journey map. As you can see here in the photograph, this is a journey, the user journey through a service over time. So you create a visual map of the problem landscape. Sometimes it is called pain points. Have you heard about this term? Pain points, user pain points, the point where they are stuck. So the problem landscape or just the journey. For example, if you look at this photograph, so the user starts here, then they input some information, then they are given an option, then they go here or they decide to go here. Here there is a problem and you write how we fix it and so forth, the user journey. So the holy grail of UX, the user journey, where they start, where they stuck and how they progress. A few more types and techniques. Love and breakup letter. So you sit down with yourself, with your stakeholder, and you write a love letter to the situation or a breakup letter. And by writing these things, you will find ample of wisdom, of insight about the problem, about the situation. So when you don't think of it as a situation, when you think of it as a person who you write a love letter or a breakup letter, you change your perspective. You look at the same situation differently, and then wisdom will flow, I promise you. Other methods are surveys or A/B testing is when you take the same content and you develop two different designs, graphic design, web design. So you have one single content and you develop two different home pages, two different web pages for the same content with different color, different shapes, but the same content. And then you test it. You see how people navigate those two different pages, which basically have the same content. And then you can understand which design is better. So A/B testing. Other method, 5-second test or ethnographic studies or participatory design. That's when you are including your users in the design. You can use focus groups. And you can also do service and content audit. What you see here is a list of services delivered to the users as the user would know them. So if you read it here, this is the name of the service as the user would know that service. In this case, this is taken from the UK Home Office. So they know that people are searching for study in the UK. they know that people search using the sentence set up or invest in a business in the UK. So they have listed all their services under the names, under the categories that the user would ask, that the user would search for. Because many times businesses, organizations would list their services the way that they think of it, using their terminology. Here we're using the terminology of the user, because that's what the user would search for. So that makes it very easy for the user to find. And the content audit is, of course, listing all the services. So one page with all the services listed. Let's look at step 4 in this 6-step process. At this step, you need to decide and to recruit your participants for your user research. You will need participants to carry the research. So your participants should be real, actual users or likely users of your service. But you need to define them. To do so, you can use a few categories which I have summarized here. You can use demographic category. For example, you want to recruit only participants that are age 16 to 24 years old. There is a certain reason that you want that. You have decided you need that demographic. Or you may want to focus on a specific group, a target group. For example, if you are a university, let's say you want to focus only on international students that are coming from abroad to study in this country. You want to focus only on them because your research relates to them. So you decide that you're focusing on international students. You may want to focus on people that follow a certain service or have specific experience. A specific experience in a specific service. For example, if you're a library, then you may have an interlibrary loan service, which means you can borrow a book from other libraries. If you don't have it and you deliver that book to your users, it's called interlibrary loan service. And you may decide that you want to recruit only participants of users of your ILL, interlibrary loan service, because you want to find something there. Another way to recruit participants is to focus on a problematic situation. For example, people who came to your library and they lost specific document. People who went online, they were supposed to do something specifically, couldn't do it. There is a problem there, a pain point, as it's called. Problematic situation, you want to recruit only users that had that problem and figure out what's going on. And there's another way to recruit participants. You may want to focus on people who are using your service in a certain way, the way of accessing your service, your product. For example, those people who rely on screen readers, or those people who use speech recognition, or those people who only use the internet in the library, for example. They come to the library, they only accessing the internet in the library. You want to figure out something about them. So this is step 4. You need to decide how you recruit your participants, and it has to be relevant to your project. Step 5, now you need to develop, and now you need to carry the study with the user. So this is the whole project. Now you're doing it. That's the complete stakeholders checklist, what you need to think to do all of that. You need to establish the questions, as we say. You need to think about privacy policies. You need to think what you're not going to gather, what information is not relevant and you can discard it. Who is going to do the research? Are you going to record participants? Are you going to record the physical movement? You're going to include that data or not? What is the time of the year that you're going to recruit participants? If you are a university, then it's crucial to know when is the time of the exams, holiday periods, time when the teachers are marking assignments. So when is the best time? Is there any room requirement? Will you need a PC, other equipment? Would you need to transport people from one place to the other? You want to make sure and let people know that you're not testing them, you're not testing the people, you're testing the process. So you don't want people to get worried that they're being tested. You're not testing people, you want to test how easy is the process. So this is a checklist for you, all the things that you need to do in order to develop and carry the study. Here is an example of participant information sheet, and there are many such templates. Then once you have recruited, carried, developed, and now is the step of analyzing the information and implementing it, redesigning your service, your product, your website. So I'm just going to show you a few elements to think of when you implement. So this is step 6, implementation. A few design elements you need to think when you take the information, you've carried your UX research, you're now processing the data, how you now implement and improve. What you need to think of is how to reduce the effort of processing information. So the user does not need to put a lot of effort in processing the data. There is this famous table here which tells you what you need to do, but I want to take you to this photo here, a screenshot here from a video that the Open University produced. What you see here immediately is that the name of this student, this person, that's Chloe, appears here at the top. So if you look here on the left, we call it spatial occurrence. Place words near corresponding graphics. In this case, when you look at a person, you look at their eyes. So when you look at that video, your gaze, your attention is here in that area. So it makes sense to put the name of the person here, where you're already focused. Most videos don't do that. I don't know why. Most video you will find the name here at the bottom. I'm not referring to the subtitle, to the caption. I'm referring to the name of the presenter. There's always this stigma that you have to put it at the bottom. So literally your eye need to jump from here where you look at the person to down here. Now you can tell me, yes, but Gil, that takes only split second. It takes half a second. Yes, I know, but there are thousands of half seconds of errors a day which pollute the information and put more effort in the way that you process the information. So you want data here to be close to where you focus with the graphic, the attention, which is right here. So this is a good example. Chloe, business student, right next to her eyes. Perfect. Now I want to show you that she's also happened to wear white t-shirt. I don't know if it was planned or no, but the white t-shirt corresponds extremely well with the white text, which works well with the logo here, white logo. Nobody's kind of fighting, nobody's arguing here, so to speak, visually arguing. Nobody's shouting here. There's a beautiful correlation, and that creates visual hierarchy. And now, remember I was talking about visual consistency. There is consistency here. There are not too many colors all jumping and all wanting to grab your attention. No, there is a logo, there is a name, there is a white t-shirt. It works well. More so, the letter C here on her t-shirt corresponds to her first name, Chloe. I don't know if that was planned or whether it's what we call happy accident. You did something, then you said, actually, it follows a good design practice. We don't know, but I'm referring to what I see here. And you see the background is blurred. This is a good technique to bring out the person to the fore, to the front. I don't really need all the information of the background. Sometimes it competes with the person. So they have blurred the background using a depth of field. And again, elsewhere I have a full presentation about filming techniques and graphic design techniques where I talk about these things. But here I want to show you something interesting. Look again at the t-shirt. You see the letter C. It looks like it is made from floral decoration. It looks like green and yellow flowers, which represent the yellow-green flowers at the background here. So there is symbiosis, a visual consistency, 360-degree consistency of all the elements, which makes it easier for my eyes, and it takes less time to decode the information. So when you implement the result you have found into your user interface, user design, web design, product design, service design, think about these concepts here that I'm sharing with you. Now, there are what we call memory supportive strategies that support the memories. And what I've done, I have aligned them to design elements, to element in graphic design. So we know that users like to find patterns in information. So you want to create that pattern, a repeating pattern in the way that you present your information. In graphic design or web design, we call it layout. We achieve it through layout and composition. That's how we achieve a pattern. And again, I have a separate presentation that deals with best practice in graphic and web design. We know that the brain likes connections, logical connection from one segment of information to the other. We don't want a jump, we want logical connection. This we achieved through a coherent structure, coherent information architecture. We know that we want to engage emotionally. We want to develop stories. People remember information better when they are presented as an emotional story rather than a dry data. We achieve that in graphic design through the use of color, lines, and shapes. And we know that users relate to information better if the information is associated with their prior knowledge, with what they know beforehand. So if they know something, that is a hook for you, a starting point to develop further knowledge. In UX, in graphic design, we call it market research. You learn a user, you learn what they know, and then you can develop it from there. There are other psychological ways that the mind corresponds or interacts with information. We know that the mind likes novelty. It attracts to novelty. We know that the eye, the brain likes movement. So if you move quickly, your eyes naturally will focus on that. That's psychological thing, to focus on what moves. So if you want to grab someone's attention on website, for example, you create some movement there. And we know that if there is movement, it is easier to navigate information. We know that the brain likes to compare and to relate things. The brain likes to compare one color to another, one concept to another concept. That's how the brain operates. So you can structure information in that way. If you're an educational institution, you might want to consult Bloom taxonomy, which is a classification of educational learning levels. Here I've summarized it for you. Again, I have a separate presentation that deals with this specifically. So here at the top, remembering, the learner is just able to recognize or memorize information. In this triangle, it's actually put at the bottom, remembering. At the top is creating. Creating is producing something new product or a new approach. There are many words that you can use for each category when you develop your content, your information, your classes. And we have graphic design principles and best practice, how we use colors and shapes. For example, we can create dominant and emphasis, as you can see here, just by changing one color for one item on the page. That will make it jump. What you want is to make sure that the viewer eyes is led into your page. You don't want your viewer's eye led off the page to somewhere else. So you want to navigate their attention into your content. Keep them engaged within the piece of the work. Again, I have separate presentation dealing with that specifically. In graphic design, we're talking about a brand, so it's a complete mark set that identify a service, differentiate it from the competition. This is an example of brand, visual graphic brand from Transport for London. So to summarize, user-centered research. Remember that you need to do study and research before you start your design. Remember, you need to know where your north is. When you are doing your research, do not just look at the statistics. You need to do a full research that looks at what users are thinking, what they are doing, and what they are feeling. So you understand if what's popular is also what works. Something can be popular but may not work well. It is the total user experience you want to identify. There are 5 factors that you can implement which will add value to your service, to your product implementation. A few design elements you need to think when you take the information, you're now processing the data, how you now implement and improve. So the 6-step process: define your question, focus on your user and market research, decide on your research method, decide how you recruit participants, then recruit them, develop and carry the study with them, and then implement it, apply it. I'm Dr. Gil Deckel. Thank you very much.